Okay, I believe we are live, and welcome everybody to today's video recap. And I'm excited to be talking today about color. We've had a great week of watercoloring and just playing with color. And so as we paint, or as we kind of recap what we did this week, and I'm just making sure everything's lined up here and organized, we're going to be looking at some of our favorite colors through the week, and we're going to be talking about how we use this now going forward in practical application. And it's going to be, we're going to keep this broadcast today to 30 minutes. Oh, yeah, 30 minutes or less, I think 30 minutes, because I have an appointment at 2:45. I have to take my daughter to the doctor. She's all set to play soccer next week, and her ankle's been bothering her, and I think it's resulting from a sprain she had a couple of months ago, so we're wondering why she still has pain, and we're going to go see about that. So hopefully it won't be a big deal. Anyhow, so as we get started today, I've just asked you in the chat if you would list some of your favorite colors, things that you've maybe experimented this week. Feel free to mention a color combination that might have surprised you, something that, or a color that you go back and forth to all the time. I love hearing and seeing your feelings about your favorite colors and the ones that you experienced this week. As we talked about color theory, we looked at complementary colors a lot because they can be very powerful forces for good or for evil. They can make terrible mud, which actually can be a really good thing, but they also contrast with each other in a beautiful way. And we saw that today, or this week, as we worked with complementary colors. And I want to show you a couple of images from students here. These are paintings by Frances Prine and Anna Delbon Masucci. Hi, Anna. I see that you're here today. Both of these are fascinating because they both use the same color palette. Frances did two paintings using the same colors on the left there, and Anna did two paintings using the same colors on the right. And the fact that we can create such drastically different moods and seasons and temperatures with our with the same color palette should help us to understand that color is way more than just the colors that you see in your palette. We end up with, you know, so many possibilities just from three colors. And once you start adding in new colors, then the combinations really are infinite. So that's just something to think about and remember as we paint. We can create something that's soft and neutral or vibrant and complementary and have a lot of fun with it. The other thing I think is that I loved hearing how many of you were just having a good time playing with color. And that felt like a good break after our intense focus on values last week, because values are kind of brain stretching. You can always improve your ability to see and paint values in your images. And so when we're thinking about values, I think it always is going to feel a little bit like a struggle, like a little bit of a battle to train your mind. And so playing with colors is kind of a way to relax and have a little bit of fun with it. Complementary colors, working with a color palette is also a huge topic, but it's a little bit more fun to explore. We can be a little bit freed to try some different things out. And I think that makes it really enjoyable. And then we need to remember as well, and I wanted to tie this together, as you're playing with color, value plays a big role in that too. And sometimes a color, when you've chosen some colors and mixed them together in a color study, if your values are all the same, your result might not be that exciting to you or that interesting. So try to think about when you're playing with your colors to use some as really strong, powerful, dark values and some as brighter, paler values. And then you'll really start to see how they interact in kind of one of those contrast situations, which we're always trying to achieve with watercolor. I'm just going to look at some of the colors that you have listed here in the chat, and we'll quickly go along there. And like I said, I don't want to run out of time here, so I'll try to do this quickly. Some comments on colors. Carolyn says she just bought Daniel Smith's Bordeaux, which is a rich wine color. That'll be fun to use. Of course, choosing really rich dark colors helps you get those really beautiful darkest darks, and then diluted with watercolor, we get beautiful pale colors as well. Desiree says quinacridone gold is both her best and her worst. I like the color, but not the way it behaves. And sometimes that happens. We have a color that can overtake and overpower an entire painting, and yet it's really beautiful as well and mix as well. Now, Leslie, you've commented that you're a fan of Daniel Smith's Potter's Pink, and I actually pulled it out today. I looked through all my paints and I pulled out all the colors that I never use, and I thought I should really force myself to get to know them a little bit better and appreciate them. So often a color that we find hard to work with, we just need to get to know it a little bit better. And Potter's Pink can be a little bit of a struggle because it's a really dense, kind of sticky kind of consistency, which makes it a little bit harder to work with. But it's amazing, has amazing granular qualities. Sarah loves Quin Gold too. Leslie also comments Pyrrole Orange, a powerful, brilliant orange. I'd say fire engine orange, only fire engines aren't orange, but it's that kind of brightness. Now, Carol, I think you must be a fan of Jean Haines because some of the colors you've listed I know are some of her favorites. Some of mine too. Schminke's Helio Turquoise, Amethyst Genuine, Aussie Red Gold. Tracy comments Cobalt Teal, Quinacridone Rose, Quin Violet, Quin Gold, Indian Yellow. Those are some of my favorites as well. Shirley loves Daniel Smith's Green Gold, Undersea Green, another vote for Aussie Gold, Opera Pink, Phthalo, Indian Yellow, Cobalt Blue. Yeah, we have so many wonderful colors and there's so much fun to play with. One I really have to recommend is that Aussie Red Gold. It is such an amazing color. Mixed and on its own, it just seems to liven up any painting. Moving on, Joanne commented regarding the cadmium colors. She's been working on replacing her cadmium red, ultramarine blue, and cadmium yellow. Regarding cadmium colors, and we looked at this a little bit in the discussion for this week's lesson, cadmium colors tend to be more opaque. They're semi-transparent is usually how they're listed because no watercolor is truly purely opaque. But a semi-transparent color has a bit more opacity, which means it often doesn't mix well, doesn't play well with others. So what I like to do with cadmium colors is I save them towards the end of my painting to add a pop of color, maybe a lighter value cadmium like cadmium yellow, to place it over a dark background to add that pop of color. You can layer it over top of dark stuff, and you can layer it or drop it into a wet wash and it'll flow out and add a little bit of light illuminating in. And with cadmium red, cadmium orange, you can also do the same thing. Put them over a darker wash. Cobalt teal has a bit of semi-transparency, so it actually works really well for layering over top of darker colors as well. And that's one thing that I try to do with my cadmium colors. Let's see here. I know that while I'm painting here, you're going to be commenting on the different characteristics of the colors, and I appreciate that. I want to show you a little bit over on my work surface, so we'll move there in just a moment. And but I do have some notes here I want to cover before I forget all about them. I'm going to show you one of my favorite, brand new favorite neutral color combos. I had this magical thing happen in my Wednesday night class that I'm going to show you for mixing neutrals. And then I wanted to quote a couple of artists from our discussion group. And yes, I'm calling you artists and not just students, because if you're making paintings, you're an artist. Carolyn commented she was working on a painting and it wasn't going well. She didn't see it she couldn't envision it turning out, so she said she went into destruct testing mode. And I love that phrase, that attitude that, you know what, I'm gonna totally destroy this painting and learn as much as I can while I'm in the process. When we see a painting that's not turning out, that's our opportunity to throw a lot more paint on it and see what we can learn by really pushing our boundaries. And so that's kind of, I love that phrase, destruct testing mode. Maureen Shields had a great comment just regarding her thought process during the lessons. And I know sometimes I hear you asking, Angela, can we do it this way? And is it okay if I don't use your reference photo? And, you know, I tried to do cool colors on top and warm colors on the bottom, but I felt like I needed to have both on both sides of the painting. And is that okay? And it's always okay. My answer is always yes. Please do what works for you in these lessons. Take the principles I'm teaching and apply them to what's right for you, the place you're at in your watercolor journey, and the way that you interpret your reference photo and use your watercolors. And Maureen said, and so Maureen's comment was, I had to remind myself that I'm not here to learn how to paint like Angela, but rather to take from the course the lessons that will help me with my own style of painting. I don't think I will ever be a loose painter, but I can strengthen my knowledge of color and composition and try new things that I'm sure will work their way into my usual florals. Folks, I have to tell you, one of these days, loose painting is going to be passé. Everyone's going to move on to a different style, and I'm going to be very uncool. And you will be working on refining your own style and finding what fits your own heart and what you want to say in your paintings. And that makes me excited. I want you to be on that path. And I would hate if you were trying to copy me and that was a digression, a diversion, from what you actually wanted to achieve. So take what I'm teaching and make it your own, make it yours, and your style will come out and you'll just love your painting journey. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to do is, you know, I did a little giveaway on week 1. Jane Shimonik won my daffodil painting, my little daffodil sketch. And today I'm doing a giveaway again. I've chosen one person from my student registration at random. So number 17 is Lisa Burke. And Lisa, you have won 3 tubes of Daniel Smith watercolor paint of your choice. So you need to email me and tell me what colors you'd like, and I will make sure they get shipped to you. So congratulations, Lisa. And I will be doing more giveaways as the course goes on. So it's kind of fun for me to surprise you all with that. Let's move over to my work surface here and get a little bit of painting in. So right now on the painting surface, you can see, just turn my computer so I can still make sure my everything's running properly as I'm painting here. You can see what I was playing with when I came into the studio today. I've been dividing my paper into quadrants or just smaller areas and then just trying colors out and playing with them. And so I actually grabbed a handful of watercolors that I never use and just squeezed them out into this little sushi plate here. They're really handy for this, and you can even put your brush in the chopstick holder to keep it nearby. And so I used that little plate. I threw in some Potter's Pink, some goethite brown ochre, which I actually had. Arda kept using it throughout the week in her paintings, and I liked it so much that I said I'm gonna have to order that, and here I had it in my palette. or in my box of paints. I've just never really gotten to know it. Lunar Earth, another earthy color that I haven't really gotten to know. What else have I got? Sennelier's Cobalt Green, which to me looks a lot like Sleeping Beauty Turquoise over here in this corner. This is Lunar Blue. That's Potter's Pink. This is Quinacridone Lilac, and this is Lunar Black, which is my one black paint, and this is the goethite over here. So my challenge to myself this week will be to continue to play with those. I actually made this little floral over here using the Lunar Blue and the Lunar Black for my background, a little bit of Quin Lilac, a little bit of goethite to be my yellow, and a little bit of the Cobalt Green, so they're kind of all in there. And I'm just playing around with the colors and seeing what I can get. And so that's going to be fun to continue to do. And I'm going to do a little more of that in just a second here. I have a few more things I want to show you. Again, just little sketches and studies. New painters aren't the only people who do small little explorations. And John Lovett, I think I mentioned him actually last week. There's his name for those of you who want to write it down. He's an Australian artist, a watercolorist, and his style is really beautiful, and he has some really good tutorials, like written tutorials, not videos, on his website. So if you get the chance to visit his website, take a look for his tutorials, and he gives a list of different ways to use watercolor, which is really quite amazing. And he had a blog post about painting these smaller studies to create his own, to wake up his own painting style. And I think I talked about this last week, but it bears repeating. These are some I did on my Wednesday night, and this is actually my favorite. I did, often when you're painting small, because your painting is so small, you need to symbolize everything. So I symbolized 2 trees with just those big vertical slashes. And I just made me so happy, those little slashes of vertical color. This is, I think, my favorite little sketch that I've done this week. Well, my second favorite, because then I took that daffodil painting. I'm sorry, Jane, I still haven't mailed it out. I will do it this weekend. But I've been kind of just keeping it here to enjoy for a few days longer. But I took this daffodil study, which I liked, but didn't really, I keep wanting to push it a little bit further. And I did a version here where I painted my yellow to symbolize my flowers in a big, large slash of yellow. And then my green to symbolize, and I like using the word symbolize because really every time we're painting, we're symbolizing things. We can't make the things we're painting. We're just showing shapes and arrangements of color that tell people what we're trying to tell them about. It's all symbolic. And then I used cling wrap with a little bit of the opera pink and the yellow. I think this was Indian yellow, to create my daffodil petals. And it ended up being really quite, I think you can see it there, really quite effortless to create those daffodil petals with the cling wrap. I scrunched it onto my wet wash. Once it was dry, I removed it and I added a few lines to show the daffodil kind of trumpet shape. And after that, it was done. So that was kind of fun and special. Oh, Carol, I wanted to just comment. I noticed that they said there was a volcano erupting on the big island of Hawaii. I hope everything's okay and not too anxious where you are. I was thinking about my students in Hawaii when I saw that on the news this morning. Just moistening my palette one more time. I want to show you that neutral combination that I've been really enjoying. And it kind of was just an accidental discovery as I was trying to clean up this palette, because as you can see, this palette has a lot of colors that are almost completely gone. And so before I refill them, I'm trying to empty as much as possible so that I can refill them into a different palette, I think. So trying to use up what's in here, which also forces me to use some interesting color combinations, as the colors I usually go to run out and the ones I don't use as much are left over. So this is opera pink, and it's a little bit crunchy because it really is at the tail end of the opera pink. And so that is the opera pink. And then I'm going to add a little cobalt teal, and this is one of my favorite combinations because it makes kind of a grayish violet, which is very pretty. We'll just throw a little bit of that onto my painting here. Right there, there's a sky. And then we're going to add another color to try to get a little closer to gray. We're going to add the quinacridone deep gold. And we might have to go back and forth with this a little bit to get the color I want. I was looking for kind of a neutral, and it's a little bit orangey to me, so we're going to add a little bit more teal to it. And that gets it a little bit more greenish, so we're going to add a little more pink to it. Anytime you're mixing colors, if it looks too green, you want to add the complement to green, so you would add a red, or in this case a pink. If it looks too pink, which it does now, then you'd want to add a little bit of blue to, or a little bit of green to it, which in this case is our cobalt teal with maybe a hair more quinacridone deep gold. And anytime you're mixing 3 approximate triads, you really can't go too wrong. Just it might take a while if you're really wanting to get a pure neutral, just going back and forth. So I think that's about close enough. That's kind of a murky gray brown. So that's my neutral. And of course, like I said, I can add a little more teal to it if I want it to be a greenish neutral. A little more teal in the yellow, quin deep gold. I can add a little more pink to it if I want it to be kind of peachy. I can vary it to create some fascinating neutrals. And once I've placed that on my paper, I have my neutral laid down there. And I'm going to fill one of these squares with that entire neutral, trying to use a fair bit of water to give it a little bit of time to start to dry. And already actually I see this one starting to change. we have some colors, and you've already noticed this throughout this week, I'm sure, as you explored those variations on your palette. Some colors mix really well and stay mixed, and others start to change as they dry and separate. And that's, I think, when color starts to really get fun. So I'm going to show you what these do as they dry. And actually, I'm going to throw a little bit of salt on one too. Just a few grains. I have like 25 grains of salt on my hand right now. And my floor of my studio is always gritty with salt because I often shake out more than I need. So I try to be kind of sparing with it. So as that color starts to dry, it's going to change. And this is what I got on Wednesday night, and I'm just going to pull it as close as I can so you can see it. The murky grayish brown, as it dried, it separated, and you can see the cobalt teal, you can see the gold, you can see the pink. There might have been a hair of phthalo turquoise in there too, I'm not real sure, but amazing complexity in this kind of used to be formerly neutral mixture, original mixture. And I just thought that was really beautiful. And I'm going to be using that combination more than once in my paintings. You can see in my palette as well, as it starts to dry in the palette, the color starts to separate and you get this kind of oil slick of colors. Okay, looking at my notes again, just pausing here to make sure I'm staying on task, which is always a challenge because I can see you guys chatting and I don't want to miss anything. I'm terrible that way. Carol, we're thinking of you in Hawaii. I know I lived in Papua New Guinea. We had a lot of volcano activity there too. And it is a little bit of foreign to us Northerners to live in a place where you have that risk of live volcanoes, that just that heat, all that heat underground, and that idea that life can change at any minute. So we're thinking of you. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about is when we're playing with colors here, and this is kind of a bit of an example. Here I have my vibrant, my opera pink and my teal sky, and I've got my neutral bottom down below. And so I've got a large mass of neutral, which is about almost 2/3 of the painting. Then another third here is my violet. And then from there I might decide to take another color. And let's use the pure cobalt teal maybe. And I'm actually going to grab a little bit of phthalo turquoise while it's nearby. And we could add maybe a tree here, because trees are really fun to paint with this loose goose rigger brush. More of that teal. And I'm being really scribbly because this is to encourage you to be brave with your brush marks. And so I've added that in, and I probably put in a little more than I was intending to make my point. What I wanted to talk about here was the proportions you use your colors in the proportions in which you use your colors. I'll try to use my prepositions correctly. They matter too. So when we have a painting with 3 dominant colors, we want to balance out how we use them so that we maintain kind of an active, what do we say? We don't want them to be perfectly balanced. Some colors are naturally going to be more dominant, like the phthalo turquoise cobalt teal mixture here. It's just a naturally very dominant color. So that means I can use less of it in my painting and have it balance the other 2 colors that are happening here. And some artists will talk about the gallon quart pint theory of using color, having one color that is your gallon color where it's in 90% of the painting, and then another color that's maybe, I don't know, 40% of your painting. And that's, of course, my math isn't going very well here right now, but you know what I'm saying. You use a large amount of the dominant color, then a smaller amount of a secondary color, or maybe a neutral, and then you use a third color as your impact color and throw pops of color everywhere. And I think we do this naturally when we're decorating. If you're into interior decor, we often think about that when we're doing our color scheme. We might choose a neutral for our color that's over our whole house or covering our walls. And then we have a secondary color and then an accent color, which is, you know, maybe our throw cushions and little accents throughout the house. And we can do that with our watercolors to help balance and make our paintings better and more interesting. Making sure that that color that's gonna be really dominant because it's a really vibrant color or because it's a really strong value, we can make sure that it maintains balance. It doesn't take over too much because we use smaller proportions of it in our painting. And again, I apologize for my math. And also for those of us who are Canadian or British, we don't use the gallon, pint, quart theory. We are all about milliliters and liters and gallons. So that's kind of cute. Bushels and pecks and hugs around the neck. How about that? And then we can all understand that. So that was kind of fun to play with. The other thing that you see there actually is the gallon, pint, quart theory is actually used in values here. It all interlocks, people. We have our darkest value is a small proportion of the painting. Our greatest our most dominant value in this painting, I shouldn't say dominant, but in proportion, we have a ton of middle values in this painting. Most of the values in this painting are middle values. The land and the sky are basically the same value. Then we have a very strong dark value that's popping forward, and then the white seems to be the most dominant value of all. So we're using it in a very small ratio here on our painting, and look at how your eye goes right to that white spot. And because some of that white spot is peeking out through the branches of my ridiculous tree here, you can it helps pull everything together. Even those little flecks of white that kind of ended up down below here accidentally help bring the painting into harmony. And these are things that you can learn with a little sketch that you don't see necessarily, or that you have a harder time thinking about in a bigger painting, because on a bigger painting you also have to think about all the many elements that go together to make the painting happen. So when we paint these simple little sketches, it gives us our chance to simplify and just to think in those smaller terms. It's a more manageable size. And so I totally understand if you're feeling like your small paintings are always turning out better than your big ones. That is probably why. Now, I'm hoping, okay, Nancy comments that the decorating analogy is very helpful. I think so too. I like decorating my house. We have a color scheme of mostly neutrals on the walls, but then also lots of red. Oops, why can't I? There we go. I like my touches of red all over the house. So I know that if I want the red to work, I can't let it take completely over. I want to just thank you for being here and joining me today with this recap. Again, I just want to encourage you, wherever you're at, you are doing great. I've been so excited by this week's lesson and the insights that you've shared in the discussion group and the willingness that you've had to experiment with color and to get to know your own colors. As we start to explore our own materials and our own colors, we become more confident in our paintings, because some of those decisions we already know. So when you're looking for a neutral, you already know what you can choose because you've spent so much time experimenting and mixing color just in what feels like a playful time. So thank you for being here today. Please do continue to share your work in the discussion group. Week 4 will be out on Sunday, and you'll see your week 4 email on Monday, because time zones make it a little bit confusing sometimes for when everybody can access the lesson. So if you're not getting it on Sunday, then it for sure will be there linked up for you on Monday. Again, it's just kind of a time zone issue. So have a great day. Have fun mixing your colors. Lisa Burke, make sure you email me and we'll get your prize out to you. And I'll watch for more giveaways and information for next week. Week 4 is, trying to think, what is week 4 about? Composition, I believe. So we'll be talking about arranging the elements in your painting to make your painting stronger in that area. So we'll see you then. And actually, I think week 4 is my favorite lesson yet. I really like week 3, but week 4 has a lot of good stuff too. So we'll see you then.